Lisa in Seattle comes in and says, Mr. Chapman, if they know this, why aren't they trying to do something? And then Betty comes in from San Diego, and she says, Mr. Chapman, the question isn't whether they will renege on their promises, but basically my question is which of the promises they're going to renege on, and what form of default will this be on we, the wise and military men and women around the world that protect this nation?
Well, first of all, I really didn't answer the first question, and it was really about the people who lent the money, and I kind of forgot it. But anyway, Germany and France are a good example, and all the banks in Europe that lent money to Greece, which they shouldn't have. And they used fractional banking. They made the money up out of thin air and then bought their bonds. And they're supposed to be prudent investors. Now, they're going to lose all their money. How much? Close to $500 billion. Now, that's the answer to the finalization of that question. What was the one that Betty just had?
Let's see, go back up here.
I got my mind set on something else.
But
oh, yeah, I got it. They will renege. Instead of making $500, I thought say $1,000 a month, whatever your rank is, I think in a final analysis you'll end up making $320. And you say, well, how do you come up with that figure? It's a 2/3 haircut. And that's what is going to happen to the U.S. dollar versus other currencies, and it's going to be worse against gold. And there's going to be default. And they won't only be the military whose wages drop. Social Security will drop. Medicare benefits will drop. Pensions will drop. If a guy's making $100,000 a month working for XYZ Corporation, he'll start making $320 a month. And during a situation like that, what happens historically is that usually the cost of living doesn't stay at that lower level. It usually goes up 10 or 15%. So if it was 10%, it would be, your cost would be, you'd be getting paid 32, and your cost would be, say 37, or maybe as much as 40. And so there's always a loss of buying power when they make changes like that. So the military will be negatively affected, but everybody in the world will be.
Mr. Chapman, there's a rumor going around the women's club, of which I'm sitting here at my table. There's 32 other ladies here. Some of us are officers' wives. Some of us are enlisted wives. There's a couple of girls here that are the NCO rank below E6. And our worry is that the United States government has a debt of over 350%, one of the highest in the world. And I would like your input of what that means when it comes to the fact that it's the government, the U.S. government, has a debt of over 50%, but the revenue, the percentage of revenue, is 350%. Can you give us any insight of where we're headed with these kind of figures that are being thrown at us from reports from Bloomberg and Forbes?
Well, just forget the figures and look at it this way. The government is broke. They will devalue and they will default. And it will turn out the way that I just described it. You're not going to be any better or worse off than anybody else. I would imagine that under those circumstances, with a deflationary depression, that any war that was being conducted would have to wind down because there wouldn't be enough money to finance it. And the currency's not backed by gold. So, what has America got left? They shipped all the good jobs out of the country. 10 million jobs they've shipped out in the last 11 years. we don't have much left. People don't realize how damaged we've been. And, other countries are in the same boat. All the European countries and Great Britain, they're no better off than we are. The free trade, globalization, offshoring, and outsourcing have killed American industry. And it was not necessary. It was done to destroy our economy, and it was done deliberately.
Did we lose you?
No.
Oh, okay.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, we hear you. We hear you.
Okay.
From one of the range security guards in Iceland, he comes forth and he says, Mr. Chapman, there is notices here in the English papers that Iceland has cut their interest rate to 7%, according to this morning in Reykjavik, from a percent of 8%. The central bank, with the central bank leading the way. What does this really mean to this part of the world, and how it will affect the European Union? Because we're just a tiny Nordic country.
Well, first of all, it's a sign when you see interest rate dropping that they're able to borrow money at a lower rate of interest, and that's really good for the economy. I understand 2 days ago that Iceland was contemplating criminal action against the people who are running the banks that caused all these problems in the first place. And I hope they do that. And incidentally, Greece has said the same thing. And I'd like to see them go after the big European banks and J.P. Morgan, Chase, and Goldman Sachs, these horrible vultures of Wall Street, where I worked for 28 years, incidentally. And I think that anything that's good for Iceland is good for Europe, and vice versa. But everybody in Europe and Iceland is going to have problems, lots of problems, because the whole world's going to have problems. It's just that they got the problems a little early and very painfully. And I feel very badly for those people because they did not deserve it. They had nothing to do with it. And they're paying a terrible price.
And she comes back in, or he comes back in, and he says, "You're right. There is a number of big wigs here in Iceland that are very concerned about being prosecuted. It's rumored that the CEO of the largest bank is being investigated and may actually go to jail. His passport has been recovered." Therefore, he is not able to travel outside the island itself. So there are things going on here that aren't being reported in the rest of the world. And thank you for giving that fine report. That's coming from Iceland, Mr. Chapman.
Well, thank you. And that's just part of what we do in the International Forecaster. We try to ferret out things like that the major news services won't touch. And we have subscribers all over the world, and that really helps, because coming in and just verifying what I had heard is excellent, because it tells us right from the source that, yes, that's what's going on. And that's important. I mean, maybe not to everybody, but there are people out there who have migrated from Iceland, say, to Western Europe or the United States or wherever, and maybe if things get better, they can go back home again.
Amen to that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, we've got to take a break. We're only going to Mr. Bob Chapman. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Chapman. I'm proud to have you here.
Well, thank you. I'm proud to be here, and among all those Marines and others out there, we're happy to be here.
Betty comes in from California. Mr. Chapman, the government of Greece appears to be putting the austerity program forward, and I've been told that this may put Greece into a death spiral. I've read this in a couple of articles. Do you agree that if this government austerity program that Greece is implementing will actually plummet them?
The answer is yes. And there's going to be a lot more layoffs in the coming month. And that is going to spark demonstrations and perhaps violence again. And the way this thing has been done was only to satisfy the bankers and the other people who are holding bonds, the debt of the country. And again, the only way to settle this issue is to cut a deal. And I think the Germans expect it. And I think the deal wasn't made already because the Germans wanted 50% haircut on the debt, and the Greeks wanted approximately 62 and 1/2% or whatever it is. In other words, 2/3. And that's where the talks broke down, and that's where the loans came in. And of course, the Greek people are not consulted. The government does the negotiations, and the government's only interested in the bankers and the other countries that erode the debt, as well as keeping the Eurozone and the European Union together. And it's an abnormal relationship. It's unnatural. It should have never been started in the first place. You take a country like Greece, there's probably 10 different tribes in the country. I mean, even in Germany, you have historically 6, 7 major tribes. People don't understand that this agglomeration of countries, they were always at each other's throats, going back 10,000 years. And you just can't tell them, well, they all got to work together and learn each other's languages and so on and so forth. It doesn't work that way.
I agree with that. I am coming in here. I'm trying to find it. All these little minor pop-ups. This one from Pensacola, Florida. Mr. Chapman, it appears that there is a housing collapse. It's starting to affect those of us around the Pensacola Naval Air Station with the recent chaos that has erupted with 30,000 people waiting for over 8 hours in Atlanta to receive applications for subsidized housing. Atlanta's just a little over 700 miles from, or 600 miles from us, but it's affecting us, and the housing market appears to be on a never-ending downward spiral here in the northwest corner of Florida. Is this going to get worse as you reported in the past, or is this just a passing?
No, it's going to get worse because of what the government has done. They've been writing subprime loans again for the last couple of years, and they're going to be coming up this coming year for reset. They were can't think of the word of it, adjustable rate mortgages, and I was crossed between adjustable rate mortgages and ARMs, but anyway, it's the same thing. And they kind of come home to roost. You have a lot of people who are making a lot of money that aren't making it anymore, and so the top end of the market's coming down, and there's nobody in the bottom part of the market to move up, so it's going to come down quite a bit. And so you could plan on 20% lower prices over the next couple of years, and maybe another 10% behind that. And who knows where it's going to end? I'm guessing at 2015. And how long are we going to be on the bottom? 8 years? 28 years? I don't know. Nobody does. It's just not good.